The life and gruesome death of Pizarro. Welcome to the main square of Lima, and it's time to talk about one of the most infuriatingly interesting men in world history, Francisco Pizarro, the conqueror of Peru. Pizarro was a man of immense bravery, ambition, and guile. His story makes the mafia bosses of America look like kindergarten teachers. So let's get some background on the man. He was born, one guesses, in 1471 in a place called Extremadura in Spain. A very poor part of Spain. He was an illegitimate son and he was illiterate. So his career was not very promising. As a matter of fact, he started off as a swineherd. But the first time he appears in history is in 1513. This is when he joins a gentleman called Vasco Núñez de Balboa. He was one of the group of Spaniards who was further pushing to the west, always looking for new riches and lands. What did they discover? The Isthmus of Panama. They crossed that from east to west and were the first people to see the Pacific Ocean, which they named Pacific Ocean. It's a misnomer. On the day, the sea was very calm and it seemed Pacific to them, which you all know is not quite true on a normal day. Anyhow, it stuck. They started founding the city of Panama, were quite successful, and a few years later, a new governor came to take over from Mr. Balboa, Pedro Arias Dávila. This gentleman did not like Balboa. What did he do? He went to Pizarro and said, bring me this guy here, and he put him on trial for whatever reason, and eventually beheaded him. That means that was the sort of cat Pizarro was. He knew the side his bread was buttered on. Having done the new boss's dirty work and literally beheaded his old boss, a reward was due. What did he get? He got to be the mayor of Panama City. Cushy job for Pizarro. However, at the same time, his cousin, a gentleman called Hernando Cortés, had conquered a place called Mexico with a lot of riches and gold. That did not quite sit well with Pizarro, because he went like, hot dang it, I thought I was doing great, but my cousin did a heck of a lot better than I did. At the same time, rumors started coming up from the south about a place called Peru. Not being a slouch, Pizarro decided to have a look down south to see if this Peru existed, because he also wanted to have some extra cash in his pocket. He got together with two gentlemen, one called Diego de Almagro and the other one was called Luque. Luque was a priest and he had some cash to back up an expedition, and Diego de Almagro would be his warrior sidekick, if you so wish. First expedition was in 1524. They made it sort of a bit south of Colombia, but they had to turn around. The weather was against them, malaria and all kinds of diseases, so that went nowhere. They went again south in 1526. These guys were tough. And then they started hearing already about Peru. They got some samples of gold. They still had to turn around. Fine, they turned around, and then they decided to go to see the emperor in Spain itself. Now, who should go to see the emperor? This is where the story gets really interesting. Should Almagro go or Pizarro go? I mean, both were illiterate, both came from very humble backgrounds, and Almagro, in a moment of staggering silliness or honesty, looked in the mirror and he saw one thing. He was short, ugly, he was blinded in one eye, and because of having lived in the jungle so much, they had all pustules in their face. And he said to Pizarro, you know what? You're actually better looking than I am. Go and seal the deal, because if I show up at court, I might not get the deal. Huge mistake. Pizarro said, deal, I'm gonna go. Went to Spain, saw the emperor, and got himself all the rights and all the titles for being the new boss and chief of the to-be-conquered lands, including all the nobility titles, and brought some token titles back for Almagro. So imagine, you send your friend off in good faith to see the emperor, and this guy comes back with all the goodies, all the rights, all the titles, and everything. This was the first start of the split between the two gentlemen. However, Almagro decided to toe the line, not be such a bad sport, and said, okay, fine, let's do this. And in 1532 came the next and final push to conquer Peru. Pizarro went down with the troops. Almagro stayed behind to manage the situation in Panama, send supplies, send troops and everything. Pizarro landed in Peru with 168 men and some horses and conquered the whole empire of Peru, which is a whole feat by itself. And how he managed to achieve this feat with 168 men is partially due to his almost mafia-like thinking. In a sleight of hand almost, he captured the then emperor of the Incas of Peru, Atahualpa, took him prisoner and held him hostage. So hostages are supposed to pay for their freedom, which he actually promised the emperor of Peru. He said, "Pay me and I will release you." For the Incas, gold and silver had no monetary value. They did not even understand what the heck the Spaniards wanted this stuff for. It was just ornament for the Inca family, essentially. So Atahualpa, in his prisoner room, said, "How much of the stuff do you want?" And the guys, "Well, how much can you give us?" And he literally raised his hand in his prison cell and said, "I will fill this room up to this height with silver and gold. Then please do me a favor, let me go, and please go away." Pizarro said, "Deal," shook hands on that. Of course, it didn't pan out that way. As the gold and silver started piling up, because Atahualpa kept his words and ordered trains and trains of llamas to bring silver and gold in from all over the empire, the room was filling, word got north to Panama. And Almagro said, "It's cash-in time." Took a ship south, said to Pizarro, "Give me my share of the loot," and he got it. Now comes the really sordid part of this tale. Now that Atahualpa had outlived his usefulness, they said, "What do we do with this guy?" And they put him on trial on trumped up charges, totally trumped up, of some treason, which was complete garbage. And they put him on trial and put him to death. And they actually gave him the choice, since you're not a Catholic Christian, you're a heathen, we will execute you by burning you. But if you should convert to Christianity, we'll only tourniquet you and kill you in a more merciful way. Well, little choice that Atahualpa have, but do the smart thing and he converted, and they literally, put a tourniquet around his head and killed him that way. Now that these two guys had gotten rid of Atahualpa the emperor, they moved south and conquered Cusco, fully making the empire theirs. Seems a good time had begun for both of them, and Almagro said, "Well, we're gonna settle in, this is 50-50 between you and me." And Pizarro said, "Not so fast, buddy. Remember you sent me to Spain to talk to the king? Well, here's the deal. He gave me the rights to all this land. But I've got a little consolation prize for you. The king also told me that you could have all the lands south of the Titicaca Lake. Please go and have a look. I bet you there's a rich empire down there waiting to be conquered by you." Almagro decided that going down south to find these new lands was the only chance he had to make good. So he put together a host of troops and marched down south over some of the most inhospitable territory Latin America has to offer. The driest desert, the Atacama, and the high mountains, the Andes. He went down south and only found death and destruction. After he realized this was not going anywhere, he turned around with the last troops he had, walked back north, and fell upon the Pizarro brothers in Cusco, and a civil war started. At the end of the civil war, with betrayals and murders, guess what happened? Our friend Almagro ended up being imprisoned by the Pizarro brothers, and they beheaded him in Cusco. This was the end of the feud between Almagro, Pizarro, and his brothers. And like in any good mafia movie, last man standing wins. Last man standing, Pizarro. Time to enjoy the spoils. And to do that, he also founded the city of Lima, which brings us back to the square. And behind me, you will see this is the now President's Palace, which was renovated in the 1800s. This is where his palace used to be. And he built it on top of the palace of the local Inca potentate called Taulichusco, which he of course got rid of. Happily living in his palace, he had not counted on one thing. He had left Almagro's son alive and some of his followers. And these followers were by now destitute, poor, and very, very angry. So angry, in fact, that they started plotting to kill him. And the date he had decided upon was the 26th of June, 1541. Plan was, it's a Sunday. Pizarro will leave his palace and walk all the way here to our beautiful cathedral to do Sunday Mass and prayer. The plan was he leaves the building, they attack and kill him, and that's the end of that show. But it wasn't that easy, because one of the plotters went to a priest to do confession, and whether by silliness or by plan, he actually told the priest that this was in the making. He told the priest on the night of the 25th. the priest immediately went to our friend Pizarro at the palace and said, do not go to mass, stay indoors. So what happens is Sunday comes around, Pizarro feigns illness and stays inside, and one of the priests comes to do the mass in there. The plotters are waiting. Pizarro doesn't come out. So right now they're getting really nervous. What will they do? Slowly but surely the word gets out, Pizarro had smelled something. And they either had the choice to melt away or go for it. They decided to go for it. They stormed out of the building they were hiding in, ran across this plaza here, weapons drawn, swords drawn, towards the palace, screaming, muerte al tirano traidor, death to the traitor tyrant. The page of Pizarro saw them coming across the street, like, boss, we better start doing something, get armed. Then Pizarro shouted to one of his other pages, close the door. And whether it was through treason or silliness, he actually opened the door and the attackers, the rebels, stormed in. A battle ensued in which only Pizarro and his half-brother were left to fight it off because all the other people had jumped out of windows. Pizarro was literally only half armed with a cuirass he was trying to strap on when about 20 people came to fight him. And what happened was that a mighty battle ensued. This man was 60 to 65 years old, fighting off 20 people. His brother got killed early on. Pizarro was fighting them off until they were so desperate to kill him that they pushed one of the attackers into his sword to literally having stick the sword into him. They couldn't move the sword out. They literally slashed him here and all over. Even an eye was taken out and a plethora of wounds. So as they found Pizarro's skeleton, the bone structure reveals all the cuts and thrusts, as you can see right now, where it was hit over 20 times until he went down. And he went down, he literally only had enough strength to take blood from his wounds, paint a cross on the floor, sigh, Jesus, and the man was no more. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.